Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Job Search Radio on webtalkradio.net. This is a time where I like to spend a half hour speaking with an expert on some element of job search because, frankly, job hunting doesn't have to be hard, difficult, painful, or take as long as it does for so many of you. You see, the skills needed to find a job are very different than the skills needed to do that job. And they complement one another, but they're a completely different skill set. And that's where this show and many of my others come in, designed to help you learn those skills so that you can be more effective and get to work more quickly. My guest is Jennifer Armitstead, who has over 15 years of experience as a career strategist. She's best known for helping people take their career to the next level by determining their personal brand and how to effectively network in person and online. She can be found online on Twitter at CareerCoachJen and her website, which is movingforwardsolutions.com. Jennifer, welcome to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be your guest today.
Thank you. And, you know, for a lot of people, they think of networking online as being LinkedIn and Facebook. Certainly in the professional arena, LinkedIn has an enormous reputation. But Twitter is a terrific tool that people tend to miss out on. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people don't use Twitter as much as they do LinkedIn or Facebook?
Well, I think that there are a lot of people that misunderstand the value of Twitter. And so if you don't understand the value of a tool, why would you ever use it, right? It's kind of like I remember the first time my mom exposed me to a garlic press. And I thought, what? There's something that actually cuts up the garlic for you and does it in just one quick squish of your palm, you know? And so I, revolutionized my whole garlic cooking experience. And, but there was a tool that was there and it had been there all along. It had been there, much longer than I had known it, but I just didn't know about it. I didn't realize. And it wasn't until she helped me to understand and see the value that then I, could move forward with it and appreciate it now. So I think that, and sorry for the food analogy. Maybe I'm a bit hungry or something. But anyhow, when it comes to all these tools that are out there, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and so many different online, there's so many social networks out there that that people really just, they don't know what they are. And we're so overwhelmed with so much information coming at us. Learning how to use yet another tool is really overwhelming for people that are already in a frustrated and depressed, anxiety-ridden job search as it is.
And thus it's important to slow down and pay attention to this one in particular because it is a phenomenal tool that I know I use daily to try and locate people, learn more about clients and such. So if you were talk to me. I'm not quite an ignoramus about Twitter and job search, but let's pretend that I am for a second. How would you tell me to start off? Perhaps talking with me about the value of Twitter, or should we just dive in and talk about some of the ways to deploy Twitter as part of a job search?
Yeah, sure. Well, we can start about the value first for a moment, and then we can certainly get into some of the tactics. So when it comes to Twitter, the idea, the value behind Twitter, really the value proposition to the world behind Twitter, and not just to job seekers, but to everybody, the idea is in a very short amount of letters to be able to quickly get your opinion out there so that people can catch that, and then if they're interested in more information, then they will continue to follow up with you. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when you go to a party and, maybe there's a room full of 100 people and you walk in the front door and you're walking along and you're kind of weaving your way through the party, you're going to hear little blips and pieces of conversations, right? You're hear half a sentence over here on the right side of your ear, and then on the left side you're going to hear another half of a sentence. And at certain points, something is going to kind of pique your interest a little bit and make you think, I want to know more about what those people are talking about. That sounded interesting to me. And you may not do anything with it right in that moment. You might keep weaving your way through the party, and you're on your way to maybe go find your friend that's like in the backyard or something like that. And so, but in the back of your head, you're thinking, that guy in the red shirt was talking about a topic that was of interest to me. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna come back to it. And so, anyhow, so Twitter's a lot like that, is that when you're out there and you're kind of weaving through this big party that's going on, you're going to pick up on little things that are going to be of interest to you. And so it just gives you exposure to lots of little bits of information without having to stop and talk to every single one of those people for a long period of time. And so,
and I also want to remind people that as much as you're listening for that information, others can be listening to you as well. So it becomes a vehicle where you can create a brand or image in people's minds as a trusted advisor, all from your messaging, not just simply listening to others' messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And so really the starting place with Twitter is, first of all, you need to know who you are and know what your brand is. And so I always tell people, if you don't know what your brand is, then don't get on any of the social networks for that matter. Don't even leave your house and go to a networking event. You need to know what your brand is long before you step foot out. And so, you want to be very clear about who you are, what that mark is that you're making on the world, and then from there you want to create a profile for yourself on Twitter that's going to reflect that. And Twitter allows you to do tons of customizing. You can make it look really cool. You can use different colors, and there's all sorts of fun ways to use it as a platform to communicate what your brand is. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jeff. You got to know what your personal brand is.
Mine is the big game hunter. I hunt down leaders and staff for organizations. I've done it for more than 40 years. I help the world find work. I help organizations find talent. I'm real clear about what I do online. And my hope is that job hunters learn from our discussion and from others that I've had with others on Job Search Radio, some of the ways that they can approach their own branding. And here with Twitter, we've been talking about the initial conversations, conceptualizing it as the cocktail party where you can listen and others can listen to you as the value. So let's start moving into some of the tactics that people can employ to get noticed or to notice others.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, you want to make sure that your profile looks really good and that it's compelling information and that it's consistent with other information that people would find. So, for example, you could very easily on Twitter link it to your LinkedIn profile. It allows you to use a website, so you could send it. When somebody goes to Twitter, they can click on the URL that you provide to go to your personal profile in LinkedIn. And so, but you need to make sure that those are congruent. So I think it's really important from a tactical standpoint that the things you're messaging about yourself on all these different social media channels, that there's an alignment there, so that when people, doesn't matter where they come to find you, that there's going to be consistency. And so you want to think about the words that you're using, the picture that you're using, et cetera. Just keep it consistent, and it makes it a lot easier for people to remember and to think about you. It's kind of like Nike swoosh. Every time we see Nike swoosh, what do we think of?
Well, I remember Michael Jordan. I think of athletic individuals. I think of world-class athletes performing at a high level.
And we think, just do it, right? That's the phrase that comes to mind. When we see that swoosh, that's just the first thing that comes to our mind. And so anyhow, so it's the same thing. What's that consistent imagery that you're putting out there so that people, they get used to you, they know what to expect. You make it easy for them to remember you that way by being consistent. So I think that's a really first important piece when you're using Twitter. And then past that, then you can start using Twitter as a tool to find people. So there's, if you go to search.twitter.com, it opens up a new URL that will be almost like a Google bar, is basically what's going to look like, a Google search bar. And you can go and you can type in what it is that you're looking for. So let's say you're a project manager and you're looking for a job. You can just type in the words project manager and see what comes up out there in the world of Twitter. And then from that, you want to look for companies, industry, and individuals. And so So if we start at the company level, who are the companies that are talking about project management? Look at their profiles, click on them, start following them. And the cool thing about Twitter is you can follow and unfollow people very easily, and you don't have to continue to follow people for forever. Whereas like LinkedIn, if you want to unfriend somebody, then you have to, or unconnect with them, then you have to go through the whole process of asking to connect with them again. So it's a little bit easier on Twitter.
Much easier. Much easier. It's very painful on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So on Twitter, so then you can see companies that are talking about project management, and then you want to look at industries and just see kind of what the industry things that are out there. So maybe there's trade associations. So back to the project manager example, there's certainly the Project Management Institute. So, following that Twitter feed. And then you want to look at individuals who's talking about talking about project management on Twitter. And so, and I love looking for subject matter experts because they are constantly going to be putting great information out. They're usually, they're really good about gathering information and then using that and sharing it, and so you can find people to follow. So those are some things you can do just right off the bat, so you can start following people that are related to the stuff that you're interested in. Jeff, have you found sometimes people when they're on Twitter that they kind of get off in the weeds a little bit and they start following too many different random people?
It sure seems that way to me very regularly. I try to keep it very much to the point because I know what I'm there for. Every once in a while I put something else out there, but most of the time it's direct and to the point. And then I get these people following me who look in no way, shape, or form look like they fit. And yes, they are. Some of them are spammers, and some of them are just curious, and I wonder what they're curious about.
Yeah.
So yes, I do see it pretty regularly.
Definitely. That reminds me. A couple of years ago, I was following my accountant because I liked how he provided little tips for small companies for like your taxes and different stuff, or like little reminders like, oh, by the way, your quarterly taxes are coming up. You want to start thinking about this, or whatever. And when one day on his Twitter feed, it popped up with can't remember the exact wording, but basically the point is that the summertime, the color for nail polish that summer was baby blue. And I remember reading it and I thought to myself, what? And it was like, it literally stopped me. And in fact, I've brought this example up probably 100 times since then because it stopped me in my tracks and it got me thinking, what on earth? And it actually made me question the legitimacy of his tweets. Because here I thought this was a person, who was using Twitter as a way to communicate stuff. Anyhow, so I actually, because I knew this person, it was my accountant, I actually asked him, I said, what's going on with your Twitter account? And he through a close conversation, come to find out that his teenage daughter was running it for him.
Oops.
Yeah. And so to her, knowing the color of nail polish that summer was a very important thing that needed to be broadcast. She just chose the wrong avenue to put it out there. But anyhow, yeah, you want to think about what is it that you are.
What's the message
brand?
you're trying to communicate to your followers?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So, and he missed the mark for sure on that. But anyhow.
And folks, we're going to be back with more from Jennifer in just a moment. But first I wanted to talk with you about my job search insider tip for this show, which is going to be about working with recruiters. Now, I have this experience happen to me all the time, and it's horrible. And that is I receive a resume from someone or we've spoken already. I call them to evaluate their resume, to talk with them about their background, and I don't get a call back. Or I've spoken with this person already, and I've reached out to a client because they've given me the okay to do so, and they don't get back. It's bizarre. You reach out to a recruiter about a job because you know what that job is all about, or you've been referred to me, and you don't return a phone call? How does that work for you? How does that benefit you? And I must in all candor say, since part of what we're talking about is branding or using Twitter to help create a brand, let's go broader with branding in this message. What's the impact on your relationship with a potential valuable resource when you don't return phone calls after you've reached out to them? Not good behavior, because in this day and age, so many of us have databases where we track our relationships with people. So even if you're not interested, call back, send an email, complete the process, let people know that, for whatever the reason is, maybe you've taken another job or you thought about it and it doesn't seem worthwhile. Close the loop for the recruiter. But always communicate, because you never know when that person is in a hiring position with an organization. You never know when that great opportunity gets presented to you or could have been presented to you. And they're not going to call you because you wasted their time in the past. So that's my advice for this show. Let's return to Jennifer and continue our conversation about Twitter. And you spoke about a couple of the things that someone could search for earlier. Using search.twitter.com, a person might naturally search for companies, industries, and individuals. Will it also do a geographic search as well? So if for someone in New York may not want to necessarily look at someone in Los Angeles, could they narrow it down to geography as well?
Yeah, so you can put in the word, of the location that you want to be in. And sometimes it's going to be hard to tell geography too, because if somebody, let's say you're following a thought leader or something that's in Chicago and you're in New York, well, it's not the worst thing in the world to follow somebody who's in another marketplace. In fact, learning about your industry overall and learning about the trends that are happening nationwide can actually really help separate yourself from the other job seekers as well. So I would say it's actually really helpful to diversify and look at things outside of your marketplace. But if you're looking for companies to work for specifically in your area, so you could type in project management and then just put in NY or NYC or something if you're in New York City.
It's unlikely that someone's going to spell out Los Angeles, California, to use an example.
No, with 140 characters on Twitter, that's not going to happen. No.
Never going to happen, folks. So.
No, not going to happen. But, just type in LA, and you can play around with it. It's kind of like for any of us, we go on Google. Sometimes I think I have this brilliant, word series that I'm typing in that's going to help me find exactly what I'm looking for, and it takes me down some crazy rabbit hole, and I realize, oh my gosh, okay, I typed in the wrong words. And so you just kind of go back and you play with it a little bit and see what comes up. And then you can save your search, or you can come back to it, and look at it again in the future and kind of mix it up a little bit. But yeah, location is something that you can certainly look up for companies, but I don't think location has to be as important when it comes to industry or the thought leaders, the gurus, so to speak, in the space.
I agree with you, and I know I've been asked about that many times, so I just want to make sure we had it on record. Mm-hmm. So you're starting to follow someone or follow an organization, and something piques your interest. How do you recommend someone engage?
Yeah, so you might, so typically companies that are using Twitter, they know that they're just using it as a way to first pique your interest, and that they're going to have a way to engage with them separate from that. So usually on Twitter, because there's only 140 characters, companies will shorten a URL that will be in there. So for example, they might be advertising about a project management position, but they're not going to put the whole link to the job posting online. They're going to use a way to shorten down that URL. So there's a tiny URL tool, and Bitly is another tool. But anyhow, so you'll see a URL. You can click on that, and then that will take you into perhaps the company's website. It might take you to a recruiter's website where they've listed the posting, and then usually there's some kind of an applicant tracking system that will be tied to that posting. You know what I mean? Like
applicant tracking systems.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's like a bad word, but it's there. And so you can use it, but it's not, it's a way to get your name into the company, but I always tell people don't go there first. If you can, try to find a recruiter who can help you get in the door. Your odds are going to be a lot better.
We agree. As I said in previous shows, if you really can avoid it, and you really can, never, ever apply to a job through an applicant tracking system. Even if you take the Twitter information, go back to LinkedIn or go to Google and search for the hiring manager for the role and see if you can connect with them and entice them to communicate with you, you are far better off than going into the black hole where nothing will ever happen. where your resume is reviewed by the most junior person in the department. You'll like that little thing, the black hole.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's always better to apply for a job through, a person who also has a financial interest often to hire you because of the employee referral bonus. And, of course, people like me, the recruiter who has a relationship with that organization, who can represent you there effectively because they trust us. Well, they trust me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a big difference, and I really think that clicking on the link, you don't have to worry about going to any kind of weird place, So typically companies are going to be providing a link to a legitimate site. It'll help you get information, but from there you can kind of back your way into other stuff. I always like to look at the applicant tracking system, so these are the job boards, because I like to see what are all the different types of positions that the company is advertising for. So it kind of gives you an idea of the landscape of the different openings. And then that can kind of give you an idea of what else it is they're looking for. And then if you want to think about being an attractive candidate, if you know that you're applying for that project management position, but they're also, let's say, looking for a business analyst, and let's say you know a business analyst that you worked with previously, you might be able to recommend that candidate as well. And so it's just really good to do research about what are all of the other aspects of the hiring landscape for the company, and then use that information. And it's there, take advantage of it and use it to be of service. I don't like it when people are on these social media channels and they're being completely self-serving. I think that people are totally missing the boat with that. Use it as a way to find information so you can use it to be of service.
Give more, get more is one of the best things that people can learn to do in social media. You used a wonderful example. You see a spot online. It doesn't fit you. It fits someone else. Why not send the link to that person? Because often, I'll use myself as an example, I have over 13,000 first-level connections on LinkedIn. I know a lot of people have more. And I also know that my clients hire me to fill certain types of positions, but if I see something that might fit someone else, I often forward it directly to these applicants, these connections of mine, I should say, and say, don't know if this would interest you. I don't have a financial interest, but if it does, you might look at this further and see if you can network your way into the job. And I have been thanked many times by people who've been out of work or weren't thinking about something, but an opportunity presented themselves and it wound up being a career move for them. Folks, you can do the same for people that you know as well, and develop a reputation of being a helper rather than mooching from people all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So how else can people use Twitter to kind of find opportunities or as part of their job search?
Well, so you'll see individuals that work for companies. So I always so let's say XYZ company has this project manager opening, and you go to LinkedIn and you pull up XYZ company and you look at all the people that are there on LinkedIn that work for XYZ company. Then often on people's profiles, they will have a link to their Twitter profile, and so then you can go and you can read what are these people talking about, and that's really good intel to find out about what's happening inside the minds of people, because what people tweet about is what's important to them. That's individuals. What companies tweet about is often what the PR department and the marketing department is telling them to tweet about. So sometimes they're not exactly in alignment, So, but I like to see what are people talking about, because that gives me, if I'm investigating a company to go work for them, I don't want to just know what the hours are, what the pay is, and if I get benefits. I want to know, do I want to work with these people? I'm trading my time, my life for money to go work with these people. So do I like them? Am I interested in them? Do they talk about things on Twitter that are of interest to me? And it doesn't mean, for example, let's say you find the project management the director of the project management office, and let's say one of the things that he's really interested in is gardening or something like that, and he's making some comments about that on Twitter, and he's talking about that. Well, maybe you could care less about gardening, but still it just helps you know, okay, here's somebody who actually has a hobby and does something about it, and he's purposeful with his time, and he's investing in himself, and he's growing. You might think to yourself, yeah, I want to work with people who are like that, who are interested in growing themselves, and so it's going to give give you some good insight. But, of course, the other benefit is that then you know this so that when you're going into an interview, you can use that and leverage it, because when you're in somebody's office, likely he's not going to have a bunch of tomato plants growing inside of his office, okay? So you're not going to see that he's into gardening when you go there for the interview. But if you've done some research, you're going to be aware of this. And if people are putting it on Twitter, they know that it's very public. And so it's not something to be weird about, to bring it up. You don't have to be ashamed. It's not like you're stalking people and they're going to think that you're some crazy person. They're putting it out there. They expect people to see it. And the fact that you find that information shows that you're doing your due diligence and that you are investigating them, which shows that you as a candidate are investing in the job search process and that you're taking it very seriously, which can elevate you amongst the other candidates.
And to use that example of gardening, the other thing that you can also learn from that is that this is an organization where he or she has enough time in their life to do the gardening versus working 90 hours a week, as happens at a lot of organizations where there's no time for anything else. So you can look at these messages overtly as specifics of what they say, or indirectly for the other part of the message that's communicated by that. So great way that you can get reconnaissance about an organization. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's a lot more that we can cover, but we're starting to approach the end of our time with one another. So I want to make sure we get lots of opportunities from you to talk about other ways to use Twitter as part of the job search. Steer the conversation any way you think would be appropriate, please. Yeah, so another thing I think is important with Twitter is to pay attention to the hashtags. So that's the little pound sign. Sometimes there's this joke out there, and there's all sorts of silly videos with Jimmy Fallon and whatnot talking about hashtag this and hashtag that and whatnot, and people feel like everything's being hashtagged too much. But the benefit of it is that the hashtags actually help you to know or to draw you to a conversation. So it's kind of like if there's a hashtag and it's related to a specific thing. So what I love with hashtags is when there's a conference that's going on or some kind of convention or a trade show or something related to an industry that's of interest to somebody, look at those hashtags and see what are people talking about, what's happening in that conversation. And so in a very quick way, you click on it and the Twitter will change and it will bring up it'll show you all these people who are talking about and on Twitter, and they're using that hashtag in their comments, and then that's going to help you to see what are people talking about. And from there, the cool thing is that you might then be led to somebody else's Twitter profile that you hadn't found before, then you find some other cool thought leader that knows about that industry. You hear about another company you hadn't heard of, but you're just going to be basically using the hashtag as a way to help you to cut through all the clutter and get right to the heart of the conversation that's happening on a specific topic. So that's why I think hashtags are really great. To use hashtag examples for folks, you and I both know the technology area, but for example, if someone were looking for a job doing Sarbanes work, you might look hashtag SOX, S-O-X, or hashtag SOX jobs as a way of trying to identify positions related to Sarbanes-Oxley, or the conversations in of hashtag SOX related to Sarbanes, and thus people who would know that field that you might want to connect with or start following, I should say. Yeah, exactly. And so, and you want to look at those abbreviations, and you want to look at things typed out fully as well. So back to the point that I was making before about search.twitter.com, and it's going to bring up the search bar. You can do the same thing. You can put hashtag and type in SOX, S-O-X, and then see what comes up. And then you can also do hashtag Sarbanes-Oxley. You could type out the whole thing, and so try like a bunch of different ways. And so people tend to abbreviate a lot on Twitter, so you want to think abbreviation. So to the project management example, you may not see hashtag project management. That's a lot of letters, and if you only get 140 characters, that's going to eat up a lot of the characters, but you might see hashtag PM for project management. So play with it a little bit and see what comes up, but
and then when you have that information, then it's going to take you sometimes in other directions, and you might see other hashtags that are on the tweets. So pay attention to see what the other hashtags people are using. So there's so many different buzzwords for many, many different industries. You just want to look and see what are people using, and it's not very difficult to use it. All you do is click on the word, and it's going to take you to all the people using that particular hashtag.
Fabulous. What else can we tell people about using Twitter in their job search?
I want to tell people to be thoughtful about the things that you're posting. So, for example, when it comes to your personal brand, you always want to make sure that you are a wise steward of your online reputation. I've seen people post really stupid stuff on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I just shake my head and just think, okay, once you put it out there, it's very difficult to get rid of it. And so you want to just be really thoughtful about what you're putting out there. So be congruent with your brand. So whatever that brand is that you're trying to promote, make sure that your posts are related to that. And be careful. Like sometimes people will put themselves in really bad situations where maybe they are legitimately at a cocktail party and they start posting stupid stuff because they're drunk, or pictures that are really inappropriate. I know of people that have lost jobs, people who have not been hired because of the things that they've posted out there. And so you want to be careful about your usage of it. If you're a reasonable person and you're respectful and responsible, perhaps that's not a problem for you, but you might also be inadvertently or unintentionally hurting your reputation because you might be posting things like the accountant with the light blue nail polish. So you want to be careful about what you're posting and make sure there's a story there. There's a consistent story that ties back to who you are in your brand.
And I want to remind everyone about pictures on Twitter. You want to ensure that, as tempting as it is to post something fun, everything needs to be consistent with your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
Great conversation, Jennifer. I want to ask one more question of you. And folks, this is a new feature I've introduced, so let's work on this one together. So imagine for a second someone comes to you. The next recession has started. They're a former coaching client or an outplacement client of yours, and they're coming to you for advice. What's the first piece of advice that you might offer them as part of beginning this process of finding work again?
Well, the first piece of advice is stop, slow down for a second, and get your feet underneath you. So I see too many people just race right out, and they talk to everybody that they know, and they'll go online and they'll apply to a bunch of positions, and they'll just say, I got to find a job as quickly as possible, and they'll throw out 500 resumes to a bunch of places, and I've seen it come back to bite people too often. And so stop, be thoughtful about who you are, what it is that you really want in your career, get very, very clear about that, and then start going and reaching out to people. Most people don't get clarity first.
So true. Beautiful advice. Thank you. And Jennifer, how can people reach you for information about your coaching or outplacement work?
Sure. So Twitter is a great place. So my Twitter handle is CareerCoachJen, and so it's a great way to reach me. And then my website, movingforwardsolutions.com, there's a contact page on there. People can reach me through that. And then there'll be links to the different social media channels. But yeah, Twitter's great because if you're on there and if you're taking my advice, hopefully you're on there. So, and if you follow me on Twitter, CareerCoachJen, you'll get multiple tips a day on things related to developing your career and job seeking and all of that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for making time. I really appreciate you taking time for the audience today.
You bet, Jeff. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to be on. Thank you.
My pleasure. And folks, we'll be back next time with more advice to help you find work more quickly. I'm Jeff Altman, and I want to encourage you to come over to my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us, and go exploring there, because I've got a ton of great content to help you find work more quickly. Videos, podcasts, articles I've written for my e-zine. As a matter of fact, you can receive a complimentary subscription to No BS Job Search Advice e-zine, in which I publish weekly with advice to help you find work more quickly. Also, while you're there, and this is very new, I've decided to offer my books about job search. The best way to describe it is pay what you want for them. Now, I have suggested prices, but if you can't afford it or you think the value is higher, pay what you want. And as of today, there are, I believe, 12 items there, plus audios that you can download. So take a look at the Books and Guides tab on the top of the page. Click it. See which ones might be helpful to you. I hope you find assistance with your job search by reading a couple of these books. So this is Jeff Altman. Hope you have a great day. Take care.